Hello everyone and welcome to my video guide on the refurb or service of a Zipp 177 hub. This process is the same whether it's a rim brake model, in the case of this Zipp 808 wheel, or if it's a disc brake model, which will be a Zipp 177D. This is the rear hub. Now this wheel has run probably 2,000 kilometres, and what I've noticed is there's play in here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's rocking. So it suggests the bearing has gone, or the bearings have gone. And what we'll do is we'll take it apart and replace everything. First step is to, if you haven't already, take the cassette off. There's various videos on the internet. You'll need a chain whip tool and a Shimano or a Campag bolt remover or chain cassette remover. The next thing to do is to take the skewer out. So just unwind it like that. Take the spring, put it to one side. Take the cap, put it to one side. Take the other spring, put it to one side. And you should have something like this. Now the first step is to take these end caps off. If you're lucky, you can actually pull them off. Okay, and in my case, I've sprayed a load of penetrating fluid in there overnight and wiggle it off, and it does come out. Okay. If that doesn't work for you, and chances are it probably won't, what you do is you get the skewer, put it through the other side, and then angle it. So I'm exaggerating this, but you angle it that way, push down, and you should feel it butt up against the other side, and then you can just push and it'll pop out. And the same process on the other side, but this time it's easier because that cap's come out. So do the same. It should wiggle and out it pops. At this point, I'd recommend putting the skewer back together so you don't lose any of the springs. So let's do that. Okay. It's also worthwhile having a small blue box to put these things in, so let's bring it there. Okay, so now we've got the caps off, what you should be left with is something that looks a bit like this. So the inner bearing there and the axle through here. Now if you're lucky, what you should be able to do is just pull on there, and you can see that moving. Now it's very, very important at this stage to tip this wheel upside down, because when you pull it out, you don't want the pawls to go everywhere. Okay, so let's do that. Like so. Okay, and the rubber seal and the pawls will come out. Let's just put that wheel down, and I'm going to put this in a box. Okay, so the next step is you should have something that looks like this. Alright, so bearings are in there, and the FreeHub is in my box, which I just showed you. What we've got to do is we've got to get this axle out now, and in order to do that we have to tap it out. So put this down, and I suggest you use a couple of pieces of wood just to distribute the load. Okay, like that. Okay. Then with a soft blow hammer or a mallet, just tap it out. Let's just get it around here and tap it. Right. If I go to the close-up camera, you can see that the shaft has started to move through the shaft, and the axle has started to move through the bearings, and well, it's just popped out. It's popped the other bearing out. So let me go and pick that back up. Okay, so following that little debacle, what happened was the bearing came off after I pushed it through one side, and this shim came out, and that is quite important. You need to keep that. So what we're left with is this axle here and the bare wheel, which is here. Okay, and that's completely free of anything. So the next stage is to take this non-drive side bearing out, and in order to do that we'll have to punch it out. In the SRAM guide it suggests using a blind bearing puller, but I don't have one of those, so I'm going to use a punch. Again, brace the flange on a couple of pieces of wood, and we're going to need a punch and again a hammer, and this time it's important to only get the bearing on the inner race. So let me see if I can take a close up of that. So on that surface there, make sure you're not hitting anywhere inside the aluminium hub, it's just that surface there. Okay. Again, let's just load the wheel up. Tap, tap. Just checking to see if it's coming out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my workmate out. That should give me a bit more leverage. So work your way around the bearing, and then it comes out. Okay, so now it's a completely free hub. Right, the next stage in all this is reassembly, if you're just changing the wheel bearings. However, in my case, I want to change the hub bearings as well. So the hub consists of one bearing on that side, another bearing in there, and this one I can feel has seen better days. There's an insert in there that wiggles around, it's a tube insert. The poles already fell out, but we will put them back in a second. Again, the process for changing these bearings is to knock them out. So what I suggest we do, or the suggested method, is to knock this one out, so the one where the cassette screws in, or cassette nut screws in, first. Then go for the second one on that side. Zipp say that you cannot service these and you should buy a new one, but that's quite an expensive process. Okay, so in order to knock this out, we again go to my punch tool, and move the tube out of the way, put the punch in there and then hit it. Be careful to work your way around basically the clock face. So go 12 to 6, then 9 to 3, and so on. And I just felt it pop out there. So this bearing's absolutely cooked. I'm not sure where the seal on that side went, but it's not there. I can feel that's absolutely dreadful. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's not good, considering the wheel's only done 2,000 kilometres. That isn't great. Okay, there's a tubular insert that was in there. So again, knock that out. The next process is to knock the other bearing out of the other side. That one again doesn't feel too great. So to do this side, we've we basically have to push this into a small gap that's just between these faces but does not touch the metal. So done that there, and now we're going to need something that's about 18mm diameter, or you could use the punch again. So I'm going to go for the punch and just tap. Let's try again. And the bearing pops out and my insert's fallen on the floor. So again, we've got this HUX, it's 6803 bearing. So it's not a named brand, or not one that I've heard of, but that's what Zipp fit to their wheels as standard. So we're back here now. FreeHub is devoid of any bearings, and I'm going to take this opportunity to clean it. As far as cleaners go, the Zipp manual recommends use isopropyl alcohol. However, I think anything would do. So let's just spray it and then clean it with a rag. Now this is, I think, plastic, so just be careful. Make sure you clean all the threads. Okay. Then pop that to one side. At the same time, it's worthwhile cleaning this insert because we're going to use this again. Okay. Now, the next job is to reassemble this with new bearings. And for those bearings, I've purchased some new ones. Which are here. I bought a selection, so some of these are wheel bearings and some are FreeHub bearings. So for the FreeHub, they are 6803, I think. Yes, 6803, with 2 rubber seals. Depending on which part of the world you're in, they might be listed as 61803. 61083 is essentially the same bearing. Now, as far as bearings go, I would strongly advocate buying named bearings and not no-name bearings, because there is a difference. I've got a selection here of Koyo and NTN. My preference has always been NTN. It's just a historical thing, but again, NTN, ENA, NSK, SKF, they're all pretty good brands. Okay, so in order to get these bearings in, they have to be pushed in. What I recommend is pushing this one in first. Okay, so just get it started like that. Like that. Okay. What we need now is a special tool, and I'll put a link to it in the in the description below, so you can make your own. I mean, you could use any sort of press tool, but this is basically a press that will just, or a tool that will press just against the outer race and push that in. It doesn't take much force because it's plastic, but it's important that you do not crush the bearing when you do this. So I've come back, I've just got my press out, and this is how we're going to do it. So this is my press tool. This is my press tool, and I'm going to fit that like that onto there. And this is the top cap that goes like that, and we're just going to squeeze it together. So if we reassemble this, Put that cartridge on there. Put that there. Remember, we've got the bearing already started. It's a bit skewed, nonetheless, like that. Now, to get it initially going, I would suggest you use this tool this way. Then we need another little cap. This is optional, it's just there to square this up. And screw it down. Oops. So as we tighten, the bearing will get pushed in the gap. Okay. You should feel it just start to go in. Take this out there. Like that, and then it's home. So now I'm just undoing the press tool just to check it. And you should be able to see that bearing's gone in there flush. Right, now we need to do the same on the other side. Okay, so we put that bearing on that side. Now the next step is to put the bearing on the other side. We mustn't forget to do at this point, is put the tube in. So pop the tube in, doesn't really matter if it's out of the way in any way, shape or form, but it needs to go in. Then get that bearing started, like so. Now let me get my press tool. Oops, I nudged the camera, but let's move it back. So again, should hear it rattle. We put the FreeHub in like so, round there, and I'm going to use the flat side this time, just as a guide. Get the press tool started. You should be able to see the bearing go in. Doesn't take much force. You can see the bearing sliding in. Okay, just my handles come loose. Now, take the pressure off. Right. Now, what I always make sure is that the races are fully home. I do that by getting one of these and another one and repeating the process. So this time we can take the black spaces off, put one down, put the cartridge down, get the other one, put that in, line them up, The reason for this process is just in case there is a small gap difference between this black surface and the top of the bearing. This eliminates that problem. Okay, so just check in there to make sure that it's lined up like that, and then apply a bit of pressure, and you'll feel it if it goes anywhere. Next step, we unwind this. Dismantle the two spaces, and we've got well running couple of bearings. Might just need to give it a quick wiggle to get it to go smoothly. Okay, but that's a lot better than it was before. There's no play in there. Right, let's put the presses to one side. Let's put the FreeHub to one side. And let's now reassemble the wheel. So let's reassemble the wheel. So there's the wheel, and here's the axle. What we've got to do is we've got to press the bearings into that outer casing there. So I'll put the axle to one side, and we will get the new bearings, which are here. So I'll put NTN again. Let's get rid of that. In the case of these are 6903 bearings. So in order to do this, what we have to do is we basically have to put the axle through and then push these bearings in from either side. Once again, we'll need a special tool. You can actually buy this tool from SRAM. It costs about 15 euros, but I made one. And again, the principle is you just literally have a diameter that's fractionally smaller than the bearing. So that's a 30mm bearing, and that's a 29mm outside diameter. We're just going to push with that. The only little caveat with these things is because of the way the axle is made, the bearing sits at that point. So if we just no, okay, it's gone through. In order to clamp it, we'd have to go around the axle, so that has to be 55mm hole in there. Okay, so let's reassemble. Just put the axle in my pocket. So just pop the bearing in to. Actually, what we should do is really clean it. So let's clean it first. So again, fast acting cleaner, spray, spray. Okay, so we've got our bearings. Got our press. Start to reassemble, so let me get the axle from my pocket. I've already cleaned that, and it's worthwhile at this point putting a bit of PTFE fluid. What this does is this allows the bearings to slide on a bit easier. So, bit there, bit there. I'm going to put this one on this side first of all. A bit tight. Should try and get it as square as possible. And I'm struggling. Still struggling. So let me just check there's no burr on here. So if you get it on square like that, then it goes over and it's easy to slide. Okay, so that goes in the drive side like so. The other side goes in the non-drive side. Try and get it as square as you can again. So we're at the point now where we have to reassemble the wheel. What I've done is I've put the axle through, bearing on that side which is slightly cockled, not ideal. Try and get it as square as you can. I can't push that any further. Axle, bearing. What we need to do now is to press that all together. The way this is going to work is we've got the press tool and the adapters. So adapter on one side, adapter on the other, and we just squeeze the whole thing together. Push that through like that. You set that up there so we can see it. Push the other adapter onto there. Get the other end of the press and screw it in. And what you should be able to see, hopefully, is as I screw this down, it should straighten itself up and start to go down. So you should be able to see this gap is getting smaller as the bearing gets pressed in. Fill one bearing seat home, which is that side, and now I suspect the other side clearly is still sticking out slightly. We just have to turn that a bit more. Okay, both bearings are now in. So we unravel this, unscrew it. Careful you don't damage your wheel while doing this. That's one side. Take that out. Let me get my small camera out for a close-up. You should be able to see that bearing is in. That bearing is also in, and this shaft spins very, very smoothly. Okay, so just make sure that is home, so on that surface there. The next thing we need to do is we need to put the shim in, which is that small, it looks like a washer. Just clean that up. And then put that onto the axle, like so. Okay. Now we have to reassemble the poles and the FreeHub. So let's just move that to one side. What we've got is we've got the FreeHub, which we change the bearings on. Spins very, very smoothly. A rubber seal and these 3 pawls, which I'm hoping you can see, but it might not be that easy to see. We need to clean these up, and they only go in one way, and it's difficult for me to photograph this, but they slide in like that. So the outer section, and this could actually do with a bit more of a clean. I'm just going to take that out and clean it a bit more. The slightly fatter section goes towards the inside bearing side effectively. The same again with this one. And this one. Now on that spring there looks to be a small amount of dirt, which will just fish out of the way. There we go. Okay, so the shim's in. Just need to clean this rubber seal. Now this rubber seal, it's important you put it the right way. And the right way is, there's a groove in the seal, and that groove should face outwards. So in our case, that would slide over like that. Okay, now the pole should keep that in to an extent. What I would also recommend you do at this point is to grease the ratchet hub. So let me get some grease. This finish line grease is cycling specific, it's PTFE and it's very expensive. The only thing I found with this over a British winter is it tends to not last very long. And I have to repack it every, I don't know, a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, especially on my pedals. That's one thing. This multi-purpose grease, which is significantly cheaper and comes in a big pot, has slightly higher friction, but it lasts a lot longer, so this is my preferred option. So let's get a bit of grease out. Check that seal's there. Hoping you can see. Let's just move this here. So all I'm doing is I'm putting grease inside the hub. Sorry, the ratchet mechanism. Just going to move that out of the way. Grease like that. Make sure you wipe away the excess around the flange with a clean rag. So you should have something that looks like that. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to push that on there without the pawls falling out. So now this can be quite stiff, so what we have to do is possibly put a bit of PTFE fluid or WD or just something to assist you to get it in. So push that down, try and get it as square as you can because it makes it easier to push in. Then make sure the poles are still in, and then you have to just grab round and push it in. Ooh, trying to damage the seal. Like that. Okay, so we should end up with something like that. This rubber seal is slightly proud of the flange, so we have to push that in. Now, in the SRAM manual, it recommends using a cable tie or a knife, but a blunt one at that. So here's the cable tie. Let me get my close-up camera out. just have to push that in there. Let's see if I can get it closer. So we're just pushing that in like that. You might see grease come out, don't worry, it's okay. The thing to do here is to make sure whatever you use is soft. I have to switch to my right hand. I have to switch to my right hand just to push this down. Just clean the rest of the grease off so you can see if the seal is pushed out. So there's just a few small areas where I still need to push with the cable tie. Oh. Just pushing our way around. Make sure you take your time with this bit, you don't want to damage that seal. So there's just a small area which is just proud. Okay, I think that should be just about right. So let's clean all the excess grease off. And just check the rubber seal all the way around. Compared to when I started, that sounds a damn sight better. Okay. Now, sort that rubber seal out, that's gone through. This seems to spin very freely. I'm just going to check the holding here and here. Oh, I can't hold it, but it seems to spin fairly freely. The final job is to put the end caps back on, so give these a clean. Whatever you do, do not use petrol to clean these as a degreaser because they have NBR O-rings in them and they will just die, expand and come loose if you use petrol. So just again, clean them like that. Let's just move that out of the way. The non-drive side has a bigger flange on it than the drive side, so that's the non-drive side. Push it on and home. And the drive side has a smaller flange and it goes inside like that. And that's it. We're done. If you like this video, please give us a like. If you've got any comments, then please fill them in below. Thanks very much.